This is a walkthrough of the neuromuscular junction, excitation, contraction, coupling, and the cross-bridge cycle. An action potential travels down a motor neuron into the synaptic end bulb, opening voltage-gated channels meant for calcium. The presence of calcium triggers vesicles of the neurotransmitter called acetylcholine to be released into the synaptic cleft via exocytosis. The synaptic cleft is the space between the synaptic end bulb of a neuron and the motor end plate of a muscle fiber. There, the acetylcholine binds to receptors on ligand-gated channels. The channels open, and this allows for sodium to enter the cell. As depolarization occurs, this opens voltage-gated sodium-potassium channels to open up along the sarcolemma as well. Once it reaches threshold, the action potential travels down the sarcolemma and reaches deeper into the cell via T-tubules, which are invaginations of the sarcolemma or plasma membrane of the cell. Along the T-tubules, it buddies up on both sides to the sarcoplasmic reticulum, specifically the cisternae, the terminal cisternae of two sarcoplasmic reticulums. Anyways, so it's traveling down, and as it travels down, it's hitting and triggering the opening of voltage-gated calcium channels. As they're hit, the calcium is allowed to enter the cell from the SR. And if we dig a little bit deeper into the myofibril layer, we see myofilaments. These myofilaments are the two things that act on each other to actually contract the muscle. So these can only do anything once that calcium is released and calcium binds to troponin. Troponin forms a sort of complex with tropomyosin. When troponin has calcium, it actually yanks tropomyosin out of the way, exposing binding sites on actin. Myosin is very quick to notice this and jumps at the chance to bind with actin. So the very beginning, myosin, the red one, is just ready and waiting. As soon as the binding sites are available, it binds to actin and performs a sort of power stroke, moving the actin closer to the midline of the sarcomere. So after it moves forward, it has the ADP and inorganic phosphate that was still sort of hanging on to the cell leaves, and ATP shows up. And myosin loves actin, but it also loves ATP. So it actually releases actin and binds to, it has an ATP binding site. So it binds to that. It hydrolyzes we can show that over here, actually makes more sense. So it hydrolyzes the ATP and recocks the head back using energy. It's breaking that bond, that ADP, breaking the ATP down into ADP and inorganic phosphate, and is ready to bind again. It binds and then it moves forward, sort of, that's the power stroke move, and this just continues, and all the while it will continue as long as calcium is present. So, how does this end? So, the neuron has to stop firing. It really starts from the top down. So the neuron stops firing, so there's no action potential. Without an action potential, acetylcholine stops being released. Yeah, let's move back here for a second. So without acetylcholine being released, there is no influx of sodium. So the cell is going to repolarize. Sodium-potassium pumps are going to work to get sodium out, some potassium back in. So overall, it's going to bring the cell to be more negative. The sarcoplasmic reticulum is responsible for getting that calcium back in. So it uses the calcium ATPase pump to do so. And calcium, it's triggered to put the calcium back in because of the repolarization. The voltage-gated channels close. So calcium's gone. It's being pumped back in. Without calcium, troponin is no longer bound, and it returns to its normal shape. When troponin kind of changes back to its normal shape, tropomyosin then goes back into its position, which its natural resting position is blocking the binding sites on actin. So it's recovering. Myosin then can't bind to actin. Actin then is allowed to slide back into place. Myosin stays where it is, as always. Actin slides back, relaxing the muscle and returning it to resting position. There are a lot of diseases that can occur when this system doesn't work as it should. One of them is myasthenia gravis. It's an autoimmune disease, which essentially is when your body, instead of attacking invaders, it decides to attack you. In this disease, antibodies actually destroy the ACH receptors. So less ACH receptors result in a very rapid tiring and general weakening of a human being. It's really a no